Sweet, fresh meat.
Grab your cross and find some wall meat on today's episode of Playing with Fear. Welcome to JoBlo Horror Originals Playing with Fear, where we take a look at some of the landmark horror titles throughout the history of gaming. It's been a bit since we've done a non-licensed game, so today we're looking at one of the all-time classics. Castlevania has been around for 35 years now, and it's a big part of gaming history. Honestly, probably about as big as anything else we've covered so far. It's evolved with the times, and there's rarely been a system released without it whipping its way onto it. It survived moves to 3D and back, had remakes, and is half of an important genre movement by putting the Vania in Metroidvania. I'd like to thank you guys for watching Playing with Fear, and ask that if you enjoy our shows, please subscribe to our channel right now. Like this video and click on the bell so you can be notified each time a new video goes up. And now, back to the show. Konami is a powerhouse of a publisher. Well, they were anyway. Today they don't really publish or develop new games, but rather release compilations or single ROM releases of many of their older and classic titles. From a game preservation standpoint, this is fantastic. For a longtime fan looking for new content, however, it's rough. No new Gradius, Castlevania, or Silent Hill on the horizon unless you count pachinko machines, which we don't. They started before the great video game crash and thrived after. Konami as a game company was founded by Kajimasa Kazuki in 1973, and I promise one day I'll get these names right. They were originally a jukebox rental and repair company. They moved into the world of arcade game production in 1978 with their first 4 games being released. No doubt their biggest release in the early years would be Frogger from 1981. Even those that don't really know gaming know what Frogger is through pop culture or just seeing the classic screen of it. Well, that and Frogger has been copied as many times as Pac-Man, so even if you don't know Frogger, you know something that is the same type of gameplay with a slightly different skin. As the 80s would continue, many of their arcade games would get ported to home consoles and computers, while Nintendo specifically would see them as a valuable partner. Even when Nintendo implemented a strict code of how many games a year a company could produce for their systems, Konami was allowed to make a sub-label called Ultra Games so they could double their output. It worked out on both sides pretty well, I'd say, and gave us gamers some absolute classics on their systems. Akumaju Dracula was developed at Konami by Hitoshi Akumatsu with the hope of recreating the look and feel of the classic monsters of Hammer and Universal. Apparently, many Japanese developers were in love with movies from the West at the time, and according to an AMA with another Konami developer, Akumatsu was in love with Indiana Jones specifically, and that's why a whip is the primary weapon. The game was designed to be a horror-action hybrid with the original title translating to Devil's Castle Dracula. Well, that's just not going to do for Nintendo of America, so they had the name changed to Castlevania and a mega franchise was born. The game was released in Japan first on September 26, 1986 for the Famicom, and then in the US and Europe on May 1st of 87 and December 19th of 88 respectively. It would get ports to the MS-DOS, Amiga, and Commodore 64 in 1990. We'll touch on those in a bit because of how different they look and play, while still being the bones of the original game. Every 100 years, Count Dracula is summoned by the forces of darkness to take his place as the Lord of Chaos and inhabit his castle. Every 100 years, it is the sworn duty of the Belmont clan to end the curse that overtakes Transylvania and put Dracula away for another 100 years. It is 1691 and Dracula has been brought back. It's up to current Belmont Simon to use the family weapon, a whip called the Vampire Killer, to make his way through the castle and defeat Dracula. Simon makes his way through 6 parts of the castle that are all guarded by followers of Dracula, with his most trusted acolytes and creations used as guards to get into the next area. Simon goes from the outside of the castle through the foyer where he has to battle a giant bat. Next, he climbs through the ranks of armored ghost knights to find himself face to face with Queen Medusa, who guards the entrance to the outer wall, which is the only way up. That outer wall is guarded by a pair of mummy kings who, when dispatched, drop Simon into the massive dungeon of the castle. This dungeon is full of death and bones, and when Simon works his way out, he's stopped by Frankenstein's monster and a hunchback named Igor. The exit to the lab takes Simon through the library and an army of skeleton warriors and undead knights. The final guard before Dracula is Death himself. Getting past Death leads to the final climb into the inner sanctum where Dracula presides. The final challenge is to defeat Dracula, but when Simon is able to seemingly kill him, he changes into his final form and the real final battle begins. Dracula is much more powerful in this form, and Simon uses a combination of holy water and his trusty vampire killer whip to send Dracula away for another 100 years. Man, I can't believe I got 3 paragraphs out of an NES story explanation. Long before it was half the vaunted Metroidvania style of games, Castlevania was a side-scrolling action platformer. You take control of Simon Belmont, and the controls are simple. You can walk left or right, walk up or down stairs, and jump straight up or in either direction. The jump is a commitment, as you can't change direction in midair. Your other actions are to use your whip or your sub-weapon if you have one. There is a dedicated attack button, and to throw the sub-weapon, you hold up and attack. Your whip, the Vampire Killer, can be upgraded twice. From a leather whip to a stronger chain whip, and then again to a longer version of that second iteration. Thankfully, it doesn't go away when you get hit like it does in future games, though when you die, you do have to rebuild it up again. The sub-weapons are a knife, an axe, a stopwatch, a cross boomerang, and jars of holy water. In a lot of games of the time, finding hearts would add to your life, but in this case, finding a heart adds to the amount of sub-weapons you can use. Find a small heart and it gives you 1, while the larger heart will give you a chunk of 5. Each use of your sub-weapon costs 1 heart, with the exception of the stopwatch, which costs 5. You are stopping time after all. Your whip deals out damage based on the upgrade you have for it, as well as what enemy you're attacking. The sub-weapons work similarly, but have different functions as well. The knife flies in a straight line and goes incredibly fast. The axe is more powerful, but flies in a specific arc. The cross boomerang goes straight and comes back to you. The holy water lands a few feet in front of you and deals damage while also stalling the target. And the stopwatch will stop time temporarily to make it easy for you to pass. Personally, I love saving the watch for the eternally annoying Medusa heads you encounter first in level 2. All these items are found in one of 2 ways. They're either dropped by defeated enemies, or found by hitting the hundreds of candles found within the castle. This is one of those wonderful video game logic pieces that you just don't question regardless of space and physics constraints. There are other items to collect as well. You can find a money bag that will either be red, white, or blue, America, that will give you points based on the color with 100, 400, and 700. Points are also rewarded for beating levels, defeating enemies, and even enemy projectiles that can lead to extra lives. Other collectibles include non-throwing crosses that will evaporate every enemy on the screen, a jug of invisibility potion that allows you to pass through enemies and their projectiles, a double or triple shot that allows you to throw your items in quicker succession, making things like the holy water and cross nearly unstoppable, and finally, meat. The meat is what allows you to refill your health during the level. When you beat a level, your health bar is completely refilled, but during the level, if you get hit, your only option is to chow down on these Castlevanian delicacies. Commonly referred to as wall meat, as you can often find them hidden away in breakable walls, this item has received a life of its own outside the games as well. The final item is really only an activation switch of sorts to end each level. Once you defeat the stage boss, there's a crystal that drops on the ground. Simply walk over it and the level ends, while giving you all of your life back as well. The items are spread out pretty well throughout each level, and while the game is hard, as in the famous Nintendo hard moniker, with practice you can get through it. There are 6 stages, and each one is within the castle but a different area of that castle. The enemies you encounter are the small bat, zombie, leopard, fishman, raven, Medusa head, black knight, skeletons both white and red, hunchback, axeman, ghost, eagle, skeledragon, and the dragon skull cannon. Not the largest pool of baddies to take on, but the placement and usage of them makes the game work. They also fit perfectly Not You Eagle with the gothic horror aesthetic the game is going for. While the enemies all take a few hits with the whip or the sub-weapon, the bosses at the end of each stage all have full health bars that require a bit more strategy. They include the Phantom Bat, Queen Medusa, Dual Mummies, Frankenstein's monster with Igor, and yes, the instruction manual says just Frankenstein, but I refuse to be that guy, the Grim Reaper, and finally Count Dracula in a 2-phase fight. Is Castlevania scary? No, but in the late 80s, neither were the Hammer or Universal monster movies that inspired the game. Castlevania does do everything in its power to pay loving homage to those eras though. The settings and the creatures are all from those films, and they use items from that era to push the feel even further. During the end credits, you get featured players like Boris Karloffis, Christopher B., and Trans Fisher to represent the greats from that era. Seriously, watch the credits, it's hilarious. It's a wonderful bookend too to the opening title screen having the film reel borders. You, as the player, were watching a movie as well as playing the game. Honestly, the scariest part of this game is getting hit mid-jump and watching as you helplessly plummet to your doom. Castlevania has more of a legacy than most games or even movies we post on the channel. In addition to 2 sequels on the NES making up a coveted trilogy of wonderful games, the franchise would make its way to nearly every console and console generation. Eventually, it split off into 2 different types of Castlevania games, with Symphony of the Night starting a whole new set of games, while the traditional 2D ones would slow down a bit. Castlevania would make its way to 3D with decidedly mixed results, and all through the nearly 4 decades it's been around, we would see releases of the classics on nearly everything from Windows to the Game Boy Advance to the Wii Virtual Console. The Konami IP would even get a Netflix show that was wildly popular. The best way to play it currently is through the Castlevania Anniversary Collection that's available on all current consoles. You get a collection of 8 games that you can play on either the US or Japanese ROMs. Some of the differences make it to where you get a whole new experience out of the title. I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention the music throughout the series. They've had full concert and album releases, and the music is some of the most revered throughout the history of gaming. Castlevania hasn't had a new entry in a bit. Get out of here, mobile releases. But the series isn't going away anytime soon. Konami may be terrible at releasing new entries into their beloved franchises, but they're more than okay re-releasing their classics. Contra, Castlevania, and even the TMNT games in an upcoming package all got wonderful treatment recently. What's your favorite Castlevania game? What do you want to see from the franchise in the future? Let us know in the comments, and we'll see you on the next episode of Playing with Fear.